I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 to the 21, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest, fine rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Loaded Mag, NUFC, another fully loaded transfer show. I've just looked at the comments and Jimmy's gone, I hate that song. Well, you might hate it, but I love it. And I know you boys love it as well. How you doing, boys?
Good, mate. Good.
Chris, I bet you're not happy with Jimmy's comments just then about that.
I love the song. I absolutely love that song. And do you know what? It's funny because obviously the viewers at home can't see it, but we can see each other, you know, at the bottom of the screen. And every time the song's on, we're all going like that in the background. So I hope we enjoy it you enjoy it as much as we enjoy it. Jimmy clearly doesn't, but give us that feedback. Is it time for the change of song, or do you all absolutely love it? Let us know.
No.
We don't want to. But I'd be interested to see what everyone thinks.
Chris, you start doing stuff like that, people will be demanding a zebra back, man. How are?
Yeah, we might have to put a poll out there during the show and see what people think. Let's get a poll rock and rolling. But look, welcome. We are back Thursday nights, full loaded transfer show, ready to talk all things Newcastle United. The boys are okay. Fingers crossed Daz will come and join us at some point. He's had a really busy day. But we have a fantastic new guest coming to join us. So we're give him a warm welcome. It's Robin Bairner from the transfer.com, chief editor of transfer.com. Welcome in. Robin, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. How are you guys?
Evening, mate.
All good,
mate. Very good.
All good.
Thank you for joining us. Great to have you on the channel. It's been a while, actually. I know we've spoken to you, I think, back in January. We just kind of missed each other with regards to coming on the show. But great to have you on here. And for those of you, or for those that don't know where you're based, do you want to just talk a little bit about what you do, what you specialise in, and where they can find you?
Yeah, so I'm the chief editor of footballtransfers.com, as you mentioned. So it's a relatively new transfers-based website, obviously. And obviously we'll be covering all aspects of the transfer market, including Newcastle United. There's a really cool feature on there that values players based on their stats. So we like to think it's the best and most accurate football transfer valuation tool online. Obviously, that's free, so come on and check it out. My speciality personally, my history is I've followed Scottish football in a professional capacity for 18 years now, and also French football for just as long. So I like to think I've got quite a broad spectrum of knowledge in European football, and it's all effectively been my life for that period of time. So it's been great. Football's been kind to me, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent stuff. So make sure you give Robin a follow and make sure you check out some of the work that they do on transfer.com, and there's some great stuff. So make sure you get along to that. And look, you talked about specialties in regards to Scottish football and French football. Look, we've certainly got some players that we'd want to throw your way and get your opinion on later on in the show, that's for sure. But look, let's get down to business, should we say, in talking about all things Newcastle. And look, the boy's here. He's here. He's in Newcastle. in St James's Park. He don't half look the business, boys, does he? Richie, you got to be buzzing at that. Seeing him in the flesh.
Yeah, it's good to finally see him in the black and white shirt himself, rather than the awful superimposed one that's been going around for the last week or so. I thought that whoever edited that one up would put it in between Joe Litton and Bruno's shirt and made the midfield three, giving these thumbs up. I thought that was good photo editing, but it's good to see that. Do you know what? Is that like a glimpse of a smile? Because apparently all the rest of the pictures you see, he never smiles, and so look, he's here. That's all we can do. Is obviously once the interview comes out, we hear a bit more about it, because obviously the media team are really dragging this interview out for some reason. I think people were expecting it to drop about lunchtime with the mid-afternoon, but still hasn't come out. But it'd be good to hear straight from him exactly how he feels about the move, a bit more in depth. And then obviously now that's that. The door closes on that one, and hopefully we start talking about incomings, because it has been a bit. I was just talking to you before we went on air, Pete. It has been a little bit quiet the last couple of days, and this is when Newcastle tend to get things done, when it goes quiet. So fingers crossed, Robin might have a bit more information that comes on during the show and stuff like that. Hopefully something breaks while we're alive. That would be fantastic.
Definitely. Yeah. Chris, Richard touched on a really good point. I just want to quickly address it. There's a lot of people talking about, Tonali not smiling, various other things. It all seems to be coming from opposition fans. Do you think there's a little bit of jealousy there? Just a little?
I think there might be a touch, Pete, just a touch. I don't think I said it to use on a show. I think I said it on the group chat. Like, one of my mates he's a blue, and really, really into his football, knows his football. He was at the semi-final, one of the legs of the semi-final Champions League game. He'd gone to watch Inter the AC. Yeah. He's dead into any kind of football, and he's saying to me, like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't know much about Tonali. Oh no, I've not really heard much of him." Yeah, he was talking about the lad from Sassuolo who joined. Did he go to Juventus, Pete? Is that right? Fratesi?
Which one?
Is it Fratesi?
That's right, yeah. Fratesi went to yeah, that's right.
And did he go to Juventus?
Yes.
Yeah. And so he's mentioning Fratesi to me, and he's like, "Nah, I don't know anything about Tonali." And I'm thinking, you must be on the wind up here. He's got to be on the wind up, because you can tell he's rattled. And for me, us getting a player of Tonali's like hype and his his pedigree is very, very exciting, because it's a statement. And I think there's a lot of clubs out there who are all looking at us now and thinking, "Oh, now they've got Tonali. Who else are they going to be getting?" Obviously, there was big links with Maddison, big links with Szoboszlai, but we've kept our powder dry, haven't we? And the Tonali deal came out of nowhere, because we were linked with Barella. That went quiet for a day or so, and then bam, we did Tonali. So I think everyone's kind of waiting now, thinking, what are they going to do next? And none more so than us. Us Newcastle fans, we're all very excited about it as well. So. Having Robin on tonight is brilliant, because there's been a lot of links, hasn't there, to French league players. So to get an insight from Robin is very, 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 very. I'm really looking forward to it.
Just to follow up on this one here that Mikey Winton, the Smiles Photoshop, there is actually a really good little thread if anyone's seen it on Twitter today, about Tonali not smiling in general. Like a picture of when he was with Brescia, not smiling. Win the Scudetto at AC Milan on the team coach with the trophy. He's not smiling. Lovely picture with him and his beautiful partner. He's not smiling. An Armani ad, aftershave, not smiling. So it just doesn't smile full stop, pretty much. But let's take it as it is.
He was smiling with his Newcastle top on, so that tells you something. But Robbie, just before we move on, because there's so much to discuss. Tonali, how much do you know about him? How big do you think, in your opinion, that signing could be for Newcastle United?
Well, I think it's an interesting signing, because he's 23. He's already won, I think, his 15 Italy caps. So I mean, Italy's not a country that's renowned for bringing players through early. So if you've got 15 caps and you're 23 years old and you're Italian, that's pretty good going. That's a statement in itself. And obviously, being a defensive midfielder, he's not a player that is necessarily going to be in highlight reels. He's not a big assist player. He doesn't score a huge number of goals. A lot of the work he does is quiet and effective. So I can see why he's being underrated. But like you say, I mean, signing a player of that caliber for the money that Newcastle have spent on him is a huge statement, and it's probably the biggest statement yet that Newcastle are a force to be reckoned with, perhaps up there with Bruno Guimaraes, for example.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of does feel it has that Bruno Guimaraes feel. You remember we were doing what we're doing right now with Tonali. We were celebrating it 1-2 weeks after he'd already signed for the club. Like it does definitely have that sort of feel. But interestingly, one that popped up today, I didn't see it. You guys put it in the chat, and I was working today. I was like, what is going on here? Because we've talked about on this show previously, will Tonali have an Italian friend that maybe comes over? Richie, you talked about Chiesa maybe being that friend. No. Leonardo Bonucci. Apparently, Mail Online have said Leonardo Bonucci has held talks with Newcastle, potentially with an exit from Juventus, more possible than ever. What is going on with this? This one, I think, Richard, you might have put it in the chat actually.
Yeah,
did.
I saw it this morning. I thought it was Big Frank pulling out a leg or something. Do you know what I mean? It just had his name wrote all over it. But it's I mean, Chris briefly talked about this morning because obviously I know you were busy at school preparing for your parents' evening, but it was just a really weird one because it's not a Newcastle signing that we're used to. We're used to now having people either established in the Premier League or people who can be up and coming talents that can take the squad going forward, and all the signs have pretty much been that. Probably not Trippier, but Trippier still had a good few years ahead of him. So it's a complete left field one, and there's been a lot of people turn around saying, "Look, you can't really knock him. He's a quality player. He reads the game really well and stuff like that." And people sticking up for Thiago Silva. Obviously, the season he potentially had it. Obviously, Chelsea when he was playing, saying, you can't. If someone reads the game that well, the mind's always there. It's whether the body will still let mind do what he wants to do, sort of thing. But I don't know. It's one of those, and apparently he doesn't want Saudi money for his last year. He doesn't want to go to the MLS either. He wants a new challenge at a high level before he backs out. And we know what the one good thing is. We already know he looks good in black and white. It's just whether he would look good in Newcastle Premier League black and white. And that's the thing. I don't know. It's a pretty left field one for me. Can I say it happened? Not really, to be fair. I think Newcastle and they have that plan of how they want to, the business plan of how they want to build the squad and stuff like that, and it just doesn't seem to fit the criteria. I know it's the Championship, the Champions League leadership that he brings as well. He's got that winning mentality from in Serie A, obviously with Italy as well. So it's a long shot maybe for me. I don't know what you lads think.
Chris, I'll come to you with a simple question. Would you take him? Would you take him at Newcastle United?
All day long. I don't think you can knock someone back like Leonardo Bonucci. Like he's yes, he doesn't quite fit the molds that we thought that we'd be used to, i.e., like a Sven Botman or somebody like that. But we saw Kevin Trippier come in, as Rich rightly said. And I suppose Kevin Trippier is probably one of the few players out there who, is at the older end of the age spectrum, but he's also got that Premier League experience and he's got the Champions League experience, La Liga winner. You're not always going to find players just knocking around like that. But I think if you get a multiple Serie A winner, international honours, very, very experienced, I think it would be hard, to not take someone like him. Do I think it'll happen like Richie? Probably not. But it is a bit of a left field one, and they always say don't do no smoke without fire. But yeah, I think if Bonucci wants to have his last years challenging himself still in Europe, and Newcastle are interested in him, I don't see why not. We've said many a times, haven't we, lads, that the Newcastle project is very, very exciting, and for people to not be interested in it would surprise me. He'd instantly be adored, wouldn't he? Instantly, just because of the caliber of player that he is. So I do get it, when these players come out and say, allegedly, and say that they don't want to go to Saudi or they don't want to go to the MLS because they want to still play at that top level. And if Eddie Howe and his coaching staff think that he can, and I believe he probably can as well, because he'll be, as Richie said again, he'll read the game so well, and he's so experienced. That lack of pace and him slowing down, he more than makes up for that. So yeah, I mean, if the opportunity's there and he's not on silly high wages, yeah, all day I'd take him.
It's an interesting one. There's some people in the chat going, let's not take it too seriously. It's not a serious link. Some saying, well, we've touched on it already. Thiago Silva is 40 odd now. You've got James Milner that's 37 playing for Brighton. At 36, Robin, would that be a good deal for Newcastle?
I mean, he would be cheap, which is obviously useful. So he'd fit into financial fair play, and any concerns Newcastle have with that, which would be obviously a bonus. But I mean, you compare him to Thiago Silva. I think Thiago Silva is one of the most intelligent defenders of his generation. I mean, Bonucci's obviously a hugely talented player, but I just don't think he's as smart as Thiago Silva and as good at reading the game. I can imagine he would be up for challenge or testing himself in the Premier League. But coming across at 36, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, as I say, for me, Thiago Silva is an absolutely exceptional player. I think he was probably underrated in England and in Britain for a long, long time until he came across to Chelsea. And for me, he was even a level above Bonucci. I just can't see a steal happening.
It could well be the case. A few people have said it in the chat, and obviously Jimmy in the chat is quite right. 36 years old for a footballer, not a great age. I'd probably take it right now. It'd shave a couple of years off me, but as a footballer, probably not. But super chat. I don't know where the music's gone. Has the music disappeared?
Daz is not here, mate. That's the problem.
There we go. Oh, sorry. You pressed it. Sorry, Pete. You got it.
We literally did it at the same time. We turned it off. But thank you very much, Dan Man, for your £4.99 donation. Hi, lads. I don't often comment, but enjoy watching your shows as much as I can. I can remember watching your first shows as well. Keep it going. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you for being on the journey with Loaded Mag NUFC all the way through. We've got well over 200 in the chat, and the super chats are open. If you want a question that we go straight to, get it in. More importantly, get a question in for Robin, and we'll ask that question. And at this point now, I think it's only right if we take that little trip over to France and have a look at a couple of players that we've been linked with over in France. Now, one of the big links really more recently has been, certainly from a Loaded Mag NUFC point of view, we've talked about this man since probably back in November, and it's Kephren Thuram. Kephren Thuram at Nice, now a French international, a midfielder that we've continuously talked about on this channel as being the right sort of fit for Newcastle United. And the links have got stronger, and we talked about it on the show with Jack Talbot on Tuesday. It's been talked about again since, that Liverpool are now dropping out of the race for Kephren Thuram. Now they've got Dominic Szoboszlai. Robin, from your perspective, just give us your opinion on Kephren Thuram from a French football point of view, and how good would this deal be if Newcastle United were able to get Kephren Thuram through the door?
So Thuram's an interesting case. Obviously, his dad Lilian's been one of the best players in the world. So right from the start of his career, he's been a player who's been watched. He came through the Monaco Academy, which is an outstanding academy. Obviously, Kylian Mbappe is probably the outstanding exponent of that. But Monaco have produced great players for years, and now Thuram's found himself at Nice, where he's been given a first-team opportunity. He's been in and around the first team for several years now, but I would say this year's probably been the first year that he's really excelled for a prolonged period of time. He played 35 matches in Ligue 1, high volume of matches. Again, I mean, he's a little bit like Tonali in that he's more of a box-to-box player, not necessarily the sort of player you see in a highlights reel, because he's not in and around the box. He's not doing spectacular things. Although, that being said, he has improved markedly this year. in terms of his offensive production, his passing, his finishing, his whole game's developed. It's become much more rounded. He's much more of a threat. And for me, he's certainly one of the players to watch in the summer transfer window. I think he'd be a very exciting signing. Perhaps not the type of player who would settle in immediately, but I think by the end of the season, you could see him becoming a regular, probably by Christmas or something like that. For me, there would be no doubt that he could settle into the Premier League because he's got that physicality, he's got that strength, he's got that engine as well. So for me, there's no problems about him going to England and making an impact on a very good team like Newcastle.
Interesting. Boys, I want to get your opinions on this. We've talked about it before. It doesn't seem to be going away, this Kephren Thuram kind of link. And with the Liverpool links dwindling, it looks like it's becoming more and more of, a possibility. Chris, how, in your opinion, do you think that that's a deal that could potentially get done this summer? And I'm going to ask you, but I want to know also from Richie and also Robin as well. Come back to Robin on this. Where do you see him playing if we were to sign?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think it's funny because when we first got Tonali, I was of the thinking that he was like a number 6. And the more that I researched him, the more that I listened to other people and, kind of learned more about Tonali, he doesn't really predominantly sit as a 6. Not to say he can't, but I think initially he's going to come in and play on the right side of the midfield. Yeah. So that left the question, didn't it, that we were all talking about before Szoboszlai and before Maddison moved to their respective clubs. It kind of left us thinking, well, do we want a attacking midfield come winger, or do we want a number 6 who's basically going to sit in front of the defence, and then that will free Bruno to go further forward, and then you could see Bruno and Tonali playing just in front of the number 6. And I'm still a little bit torn on it, I've got to be honest. Like, I'd like both, but I doubt that we probably would get both. To say we need, I'd say we need another midfielder. Whether Eddie Howe decides that is, the number 10 attacking midfielder who can also play on the wing, or whether he decides it's a number 6, I don't know which one I prefer. However, if we were to bring in Kephren Thuram or someone like him, I do think it would be good for the squad, because ultimately at the moment, if you look at the team, we've only really got Bruno who can play in that number 6. I know people like Longstaff could cover, maybe Joe Linton could cover, maybe Tonali could cover, but they don't really act as an out-and-out number 6, and even Bruno doesn't. Like, Bruno is better further forward, albeit I know it's only 20-25 yards further forward, but the game's different. He plays a different game, and he's got a bit more freedom, and he can express himself a bit more, and he can help link up the play with the forwards, whereas when he sits in that defensive role, his job's a lot different. So to answer your question, Pete, which I know it's difficult for me to answer, I would be delighted if we signed somebody like Kephren Thuram, but equally if we signed a more forward-thinking player, I would equally be happy with that as well. But I do think we need somebody who can play in one of those midfield 3 positions at least.
Richie, Chris has already touched on it as well, about that need for that particular position. But there's a lot of people, a lot of fans in the fan base that are saying it's no longer, now Tonali's in the door, a priority position. For you, is a midfielder a priority position, and would he be your go-to guy in terms of who you'd sign if we were to sign another midfielder?
I know we've watched him quite a lot last season as well, and I think he's a fantastic player. And if you look at the way that both him and Manu Kone have played together during the Under-21 Championship, they were both fantastic when they played alongside each other. So to be fair, I think you'd be happy with either of those if the players to come in. But I think touching on the point that you said about do we need someone in that position? I would say yes. We briefly touched on the fact the other night that Eddie Howe wants 2 11s to go through for the squad. So obviously, realistically, you've got 5 midfielders, and that's really including Joe Linton, who's more of a makeshift midfielder. Obviously, since he got moved back there, he's not really recognised. He's still classed as recognised as a forward, isn't he? So, I still think we need one in there. Which it all depends on whether you actually class it as the next need, if that makes sense. Because obviously, we know we need another forward of some sort, and it's probably going to be one of the ones that goes on one of the flanks. And we also know that we need probably a right centre back and a full back. Realistically, whether it's a left full back and you keep Trippier on the right, or as we discussed tonight, do you get someone who can, where Trippier can play on the left, and then you go and get a right back to be the long term successor as well, and then you've still got Burn Target as your left back cover sort of thing. So it's whether they, we always know that with this team that if the right player becomes available at the right price, they'll do the deal. So if Thuram comes into that where it's fantastic price, let's get it done, then fair enough. It's just whether they obviously see him as a player that fits into the system, how they want to go forward as well. It's all right saying, yes, he's a fantastic midfielder, but is he the correct midfielder? How they, would they bring him in to sit as, the centre of the three, or if they were to change a formation and have a dedicated number 6, or they want a fluid 3 box-to-box midfielders who can, just rotate around each other as they're going forward or sitting back or whatever. It all depends. We don't know. That's the thing. There's no leaks coming out of the club anymore. We've talked numerous times over recent weeks. We don't know. We're presuming they're going to stay with a 4-3-3. For all we know, they could be planning a system change over the preseason. We don't know. Look, all we can do is keep our ears to the ground, see what's going on, and then target on, comment on anything that comes in, whether it's Thuram or Kone or someone else. That we'll link with God knows how many over these windows. And as we keep saying, look, just enjoy it as well, because 2 years ago we couldn't get deals over the line for Hamza Chowdhury and barely scraped Joe Willock over the line. So look, just enjoy it. I know the rest of the lads also.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I have these conversations with the Geordies Down South boys because they put links and stuff in the chat, and if I put something in there for you guys, and I'll drop it in theirs as well. And the one thing they'll say is that I'm sick of these reports. We've been linked with everybody, blah 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 blah. And it's the point that you've just made, Richie, is that we were desperate for Hamza Chowdhury to come in on loan. Not so long ago. It's like I'm not getting bogged down by it. I'm just going to embrace it and enjoy it all. And I think we all have as a channel, and everyone in the chat as well. This is what it's about. Yet there might not be no bids being accepted yet, but there will be at some point. And some of these links will bring us a lot closer to our next signing. But just to finish off on Kephren Thuram, Robin, I'll come back to you. Where do you think his best position is from what you've seen of him whilst at Nice?
Like I said, this year he's been more of a sort of box-to-box player, but he is definitely more of a defensively minded player. I would say he's more of a 6. He's developed his attacking game, so he plays an 8. But I think in future it'll be interesting to see how his game develops, and it'll probably depend on which club he goes to as well, and how the manager uses him. I think he can play as a 6 or an 8. It might be a little bit much to ask for him to play on a weekly basis in the Premier League at the moment as a 6. Obviously, it's an important role in the team. But, it's possible. I would see him in long term as an 8, though. I think he's a nice box-to-box player, and that's the side of the game he's developed. And it'd be a shame to kind of waste the last year of his development by shifting him back a little bit, because he has been showing some really exciting things in France this year.
Brilliant stuff. Gary Muffat Blues has said just that. Thuram is a 6. J7 left attacking mid. Interesting thoughts, and something similar to what Robin's just said. I believe
Super Chat received.
There is, in fact, I'll do it again because I think
Super Chat received.
There are 2 super chats that have popped up. Thank you very, very much. First of all, one of our favourites, Jordan Nick. Thank you, Jordan Nick, for your £5.
Cheers, mate.
Channel. Diaby by far a better buy than Barnes, but roughly some cash. That was all. Very much to the point, and look, we will get to that conversation, Jordan Nick, in just a second, because it's a very, very good one. And as well as that, The Lesonator. Thank you for your £4.99 super chat. Anybody you'd want us to chase from PSG if they follow through with their threat to clear out squad or to clear the squad out to punish Mbappe? Now, I was coming out of work. It was the first thing that I saw just about 7 o'clock today. Is that
I've not seen this.
Yeah, so apparently PSG have come out and said if Mbappe doesn't sign a new contract this summer, because they don't want to let him go on a free to Real Madrid next season, they're going to have to, and they basically said to him, if you don't sign the contract, we're going to have to sell some of our better players in the club to supplement it. So some of the better players are going to have to be sold on to generate money for the money they'll lose if he goes on a free next summer. So it's all kicking off right now. So maybe my suggestion of Mbappe to Newcastle in the Lonely chat the other day isn't good. I'm joking before everyone jumps on me with that one. But
just before you move on, Pete, just a shout out to Jordy Mick as well, because he's also gifted 5 memberships out to other viewers as well. Obviously, it doesn't show up in our StreamYard chat. We don't know. So thanks very much, Lisa, for letting us know that. I have checked it on the YouTube channel as well, and he has. So thanks, Jordy Mick. Much appreciated, mate.
Superb gesture. Thank you very, very much, and well done to those that have been lucky enough to get those memberships from Jordy Mick. But going back to that question from the Lesonator, I'm just going to go back just 1 second.
Yeah.
Who would we want through the door from PSG? Who would we take? It's an interesting question. It's all hypothetical here. If there was a deal to be had for someone in that team currently at PSG, who would you take? I know who I would take. There's definitely one player that I'd take 110%. But
who would Robin take? I'd be interested because Robin's probably got a far better knowledge of PSG than we have. And Robin, if you're sitting there as Eddie Howe, who would you be going for?
I mean, that's a difficult one. I mean, you guys watch a lot more Newcastle than I do. I can tell you who PSG's best players are, but how they would fit into Newcastle is a bit more complicated for me. You know, that PSG squad is just so unbalanced. I mean, they only won league on by a single point last year. It's not really a great squad. I mean, obviously, they were carried so much by Mbappe last year, so much. Even compared to Messi and Neymar, there's so much. You know, losing Mbappe for them would just be so. I want to use the word terminal, but you know, it's just about that bad. I mean, they can't afford to lose Mbappe. So for them to be talking about that as a possible consequence this summer, and they did it very publicly as well. I mean, what you didn't mention was Nasser El-Khelaifi, the PSG president, actually mentioned this. He was asked about this at Luis Enrique's unveiling yesterday, and he said at the unveiling of the new coach, if Mbappe doesn't sign the contract, he's getting sold. And that's that. And Mbappe wants to stay. Mbappe says publicly he wants to stay at PSG until 2024. So he wants to stay next year, see out his contract, and then presumably he wants to then reap the rewards of having a huge signing bonus, which you'd imagine would go to Real Madrid. So, you know, the club's a mess, and it's an unbalanced squad. There's some good players, some very good players in there. How they fit into Newcastle, I'm not totally sure. I mean, Marquinhos is obviously a very, very accomplished centre-back, one of the best players in his position in the world at the moment for me. Nuno Mendes, the left wing-back, another very strong player. An interesting player, actually, that Newcastle might be interested in would be youngster Warren Zaire-Emery, who's just started to break into the first team, and he's looked like a very accomplished central midfielder. And he could be a long-term solution to the number 6 role. So, you know, he would certainly be a player that would be well worth watching from Eddie Howe's point of view. But equally from PSG, they're not going to want to sell a guy who's come through the academy and could be a potential superstar in the future, even though PSG have got a bit of a habit of selling academy players who become superstars, as I think we'll discuss later.
Yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting. Boys, you got a name?
Do you know what? I've just, while we were discussing, I've just been going through their squad list, right? And I tell you what, you know, Robin's right. Some of the recruitment of that squad over this summer's transfer window, it's really, really bizarre, isn't it? It's a hodgepodge of a squad. that they've got. Do you know what I mean? It's really, really bizarre. You know, they've just signed Milan Skriniar. They've just brought in Wijnaldum as well. Obviously, Ekatike is coming in permanently. Marco Asensio has come in. Icardi's come back, and it's like, you look at the people. Obviously, Neymar's been hitty-missy the last season and stuff. So obviously, Mbappe is clearly the hands down the favourite really. But there isn't really anyone else in the forward line you'd take. You know, I know you like Renato Sanchez, Pete. I know that's one player that you've liked.
Well, he wasn't the guy, but he.
No. That's
a player I like a lot.
Obviously, as Robin said, there's Warren Zaire Emery as well. Obviously, there's the Edu Michoud, who was at Sunderland last year on loan, but obviously, I can't see him being brought in, to be fair. I don't think we'll be looking that far. I think Hakimi would be a good purchase for Newcastle. I think he'd be a fantastic one. Kimpembe is on that, yes, no. Obviously, Marquinhos, as Robin mentioned. And then, obviously, if you really want to go there, I think you've got to go with... You want an Italian teammate to go with for Tonali, you'd go with Donnarumma.
Donnarumma, yeah. He'd be nice. He would be nice, wouldn't he?
It'd be harsh on Pope, but it'd be a hell of an upgrade. Definitely. Chris, who would you go for?
I'm kind of leaning on your expertise a little bit here, Pete, because I like the look of that Xavi Simons, and I think PSG have got the option, haven't they? PSG have got the option to buy him back very cheaply.
€7 million, apparently the clause is.
Yeah, they've agreed it. Apparently, you might know more than
that. I mean, it's out of PSV's hands. It's a deal that they can't do anything about because it's in the contract, and it's really up to Xavi Simons whether he comes back or not. There's a bit of debate as to whether he'll stay at PSV or go back to PSG. So there's a possibility it might not happen. But from PSG's perspective, given Simons' transfer value at the moment, it would make sense for them to throw money at him and get him back. But it's out of their hands. He's not a PSG player at the moment.
Oh well, if that's the case, then Robin, I won't use Xavi Simons. Then I will. I don't know. I do like Kimpembe. I like Kimpembe and I like Renato Sanchez. If you push me, I'll probably say Kimpembe, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Kimpembe plays on the right side of the central defence.
Left.
Oh, is he left? Oh,
yeah. Marquinhos plays on the right.
Marquinhos on the right.
The guy I would want plays on the right, and it's Marquinhos.
Right. Okay. I'll stick with Renato Sanchez. Because I think he's a huge talent. Not probably the 6 we want, but I think if he became available, you would be interested.
I think now he's made for the Premier League, Renato Sanchez. He wasn't quite ready when he went to Swansea. He was very hit and miss, mostly miss. But I think you're right, Chris. I think that's a great shout.
His issue is that he's made of glass. He's just injured all the time. He can't stay fit.
We've got enough of them as it is.
Yeah.
But Marquinhos, for me, I think he's a super talent. I know that some PSG fans have been getting on his back. His performances last season weren't as good as what they could have been, and there's even question marks that he could potentially be out of the team, especially with Skriniar coming in. Why not? It's a great opportunity to bring another Brazilian into the squad.
I know. I was going to say he's Brazilian, isn't he? It makes sense.
It's a great opportunity. But look, it's pie in the sky. It's a great question, by the way. Thank you for putting that in. But yeah,
to be fair though, the Xavi Simons link could go onto a section that I know you've got lined up, because there's a good link there that if he was to go back to PSG, could open the door for something else, Pete.
Richie, go for it. Tell us.
But to be fair, it's been going on in the chat all night. Everyone's been wanting to get around to it, really, hasn't it, to be fair? And obviously Tom Nixon's put it up there. Moussa Diaby would be a great signing for us, and I'm hoping it will. And I believe, Pete, you've put some stuff in the chat saying that there's been a few more little bits coming out and stuff saying that could there be something in it, because obviously it's been quiet and we know that they like to go back to players they've been linked with before if they really, really like them. Do you know? So it's like, is this one could something be happening? And I know that obviously, Robin's there's been a report tonight as well. Exclusive Newcastle make Leverkusen's Moussa Diaby priority transfer, plus an update on that the Harvey Barnes pursuit. Obviously, our friend of the channel, Ollie Hawkins, as well, he's reported the same as well. Robin, do you want to go a bit more into the story that you broke earlier on transfer.com and about Moussa Diaby?
Yeah, so basically the story is, in a nutshell, that Diaby is Newcastle's priority for the right wing. Obviously, they've been linked to Harvey Barnes as well. That remains active, but Diaby is the priority. Eddie Howe appreciates that his Champions League experience, and basically that's one of the differentiating factors. Diaby played 6 games for Leverkusen in the Champions League this season, scored a couple of goals, both against Atletico Madrid, who are a renowned defensive team, so, that's obviously positive. Performances in the Bundesliga have been consistently strong, 9 goals, 9 assists in 53 matches this season. Again, very positive. And he's still only 23, and I discussed players at PSG have the habit of making outcasts, selling who have come through their academy, and Diaby's perhaps, along with Adrien Rabiot at Juventus, the prime example of that at the moment. Just a massively talented player, bags of quality going forward, and a very exciting player. And yes, we can confirm in football transfers that he is their priority for the right wing role.
Well, you've heard it there from Robin. Seems to be reports tonight from footballtransfers.com that Moussa Diaby is the priority target, which it is. I'm going to be honest, I was looking at the reaction of Richie and Chris as you were talking, Robin, because he is a player, Moussa Diaby, that we've talked about for a long, long time. We would want him and be absolutely buzzing with him.
It's been over 18 months now, Pete.
It has. He's a player that we've looked at. We watch our football outside of England, and he's a super talent. How much do you think it would take to get someone like Moussa Diaby out of Leverkusen?
I don't know if I haven't had a chance to read transfer.com's report, but apparently the deal they're looking for, I think 60 million euros, which is about 51 million pounds. Is that right, Robin? I don't know if you can confirm that or not, but I don't know. I still think that
we've not confirmed that.
No, I still think you could probably get less than that. I think you look at where we were bidding last year. Obviously, you've got a less year on your contract from that as well. They haven't got the Champions League football now as well, so obviously they're not. I know they're going to try and go for a higher figure because they're going to need some income coming in, because obviously they're losing the Champions League coming in this year. I don't know. I think you could probably get it done for no more than 50 million euro tops. That is your top whack. 45, 50 million euros. I think that's where they're about to be a fantastic deal all around.
Chris, you with a similar mindset around the 50 million. I know Chantel Keen in the chat said 50 million seems to be the figure that Richie and Chantel has said. What do you think? Would you pay that sort of fee for him? Would you pay it to get him in the door? Another player that we're going to discuss later on is looking roughly around that same sort of price. Harvey Barnes. What do you make of that?
Yeah, do you know what? I was talking to someone in the chat, actually. I forget who it was, but I was talking to someone in the chat, and for me, I'd take Diaby over Barnes every time. I think from what I've seen of Diaby, Robin touched, on his Champions League experience as well, and he looks, he's got that electric pace, hasn't he? And he looks like someone who is almost made for the Premier League. Like, he likes to take a man on. He always gets to his byline, whipping crosses in, and that's kind of what we all enjoyed last season, wasn't it? When we saw Jacob Murphy come in on the right wing, constantly getting those balls in the box and running at defenders and making them make decisions or make mistakes. And Diaby looks like someone who would be really good. And it was funny, Pete, when you were saying, when Robin was talking about Diaby, all our faces just lit up, because he's a player we've been speaking about for a long time, as you say, and he's somebody who I think he takes us on to that next level. Like Diaby is a massive upgrade on what we've currently got in right midfield or right wing, if you like. What in terms of price? Yeah, I think you could get him for less than 50, but it would probably be with incentives or add-ons that would make it rise up to 50. So maybe I don't know, maybe another Champions League qualification or winning a trophy or something like that, and that would probably increase it. But maybe initially you could get him for 35, 40, rising to 50. And if that's the case, it's a deal you've got to try and make happen, isn't it? And I imagine as well, with him playing in the Bundesliga, I don't think his wages would be that astronomical. I wouldn't have thought.
No, it'll fit in the structure all right. I would imagine.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's another box ticked. I mean, Harvey Barnes must be on a decent salary at Leicester. Must be. So there's another bonus to picking Diaby over Barnes. But Robin, just while we're on this subject, and in French football as well, I wanted to ask what is, how was I word this? What have been your thoughts on Ekitike since he joined PSG? And he was a player who nearly joined Newcastle, or allegedly nearly joined Newcastle, and then he ended up going to PSG. I know he struggled at PSG, and he's not quite had the impact that he wanted, or maybe that the fans or the club wanted. But do you think that Ekitike is one for the future at PSG, or do you think he's someone who could be on his way out?
It's an interesting question. I mean, there was obviously a lot of hype about Ekitike last summer, and for me, when the links to Newcastle came out, he kind of billed as the next Mbappe because he scored a bunch of goals for Ronson Liga. He's obviously got Cameroon heritage like Mbappe, but for me, he was overcooked last summer. He was never going to be a starting player for Newcastle. I don't think he would have made a particularly big impact in the Premier League, even as a reserve striker. He'd perhaps done a bit better than he's done at PSG because, I have to admit, I thought his PSG spell would have gone significantly better than it has done. And PSG obviously do still see him as a striker for the future. However, there was a lot of debate as to whether they might not take up the clause in the loan deal that would have seen him that allowed them PSG to buy him. So it's actually perhaps more of a surprise that PSG have kept him than sent him back to Reims, to be honest. He is a player for the future, but I think he's a sort of player who probably needs to be playing more regularly. I don't think PSG's the best environment for him. I don't think Newcastle would be the best environment for him either, to be honest. Simply because he wouldn't have played enough. The hype was overdone last year, in short.
Wow, brilliant stuff.
Interesting.
Richard, I think you had a follow on Diaby.
Yeah, just because a couple of people in the chat follow up on Glasgow is obviously this Leverkusen will be possibly open to a deal here because obviously they've just bought Granit Xhaka from Arsenal or in the process of doing it. They've obviously hit the release clause for Hoffman from Mönchengladbach, who they reckon is going to be the back, obviously the successor to Diaby if he was to leave. Jonas Hoffman, I think it was 10 million euros. Obviously, Robin might know that better, but I believe it was a 10 million release clause in the contract. So they are going to need some money to come in to obviously cover all that as well. So that's something that's. But what I wanted to know is it's actually a question that came in. If I just get it, the start questions up, and it was from Stu. And he just basically wants to, because obviously he's in a similar sort of mould to Jadon Sancho and Leon Bailey, who've obviously come over to the Premier League and they haven't really hit the ground running. You could look at Jadon Sancho's there's been a lot of turmoil going on at Man United. You look at the management structure, look at the situation with Ronaldo, and obviously he played came to the Man City Academy, and it could be completely different there. So a lot of things around there that could have unsettled him. Leon Bailey, Aston Villa wasn't really the same sort of club as it has been the last 6 months. You had Dean Smith, you've had Steven Gerrard. There's been a big turmoil there. So do you think that's a fair comparison to compare Moussa Diaby to those two players? Or should it be something that Newcastle fans should be concerned about if Newcastle did make a move from Robin?
Yeah, I mean, Stu's totally right. In terms of style, Diaby's not not a million miles away from either of those guys. But I think what you have to remember is that no transfers are a surefire thing. I mean, you can sign the best player in the world, and it's not necessarily going to work. Look at Messi at PSG last season. It wasn't what was expected of him. So it's always going to be a bit of a gamble when one player moves from one club to another club, particularly if you're moving leagues and you're still a relatively young player. So I don't think the comparisons are unfair. Sancho's he's obviously had a few off-field issues as well. His professionalism's been questioned to some extent. There was issues about his weight and things like that earlier this season. And I think Leon Bailey's perhaps not the most rigorous player, shall we say, in terms of his approach to the game. From my understanding, there's no issues with Diaby in that regard, but you never know, that sort of thing can crop up, particularly after a big transfer, when a player's perhaps starting to feel they've made it to the top. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a gamble, but then all these transfers are. And Sancho proves that, because if you'd asked me before Sancho moved to Manchester United, I would have said he was a surefire thing to be brilliant there, and obviously it's not happened for him.
I think it's an interesting point here that Kevin T follows up with. Answer is that neither of them have Eddie Howe's school of excellence, sort of, because you look at some of the squad that Newcastle have had when he came in and how he's taken players. Fabian Schär, you look at Sean Longstaff, Joe Willock, Joe Linton, Miggy Almiron, how he's taken and coached them to a much higher level than what they were previously. So I think it's, that yes, you've got to have the right player come in, right mentality. I think that's something that Newcastle have focused on. It's that mentality. They're going to be hard work and no prima donnas and stuff like that. And then that's why, all these silly rumours about Neymar coming in being a marquee side, it was never going to really work. And I know loads of people have been turning on saying, Newcastle fans saying no to Neymar. It's because we can see the bigger picture. We don't need Neymar. So yes, it would be fantastic commercially wise to have Neymar shirts, but it wouldn't be fantastic for the pitch and the rapport in the dressing room and stuff that we've built. So I think that's where Eddie Howe does all the homework, the in-depth stuff, and then you just make sure when they come in that they know what to expect of them. Then you don't let the rest on the laurels from that. And then if whoever comes in to play on that right, if it is Moussa Diaby, you've got to remember that yes, okay, there might be more there could be more talent than Miggy Almiron, but are they as hard working as Miggy Almiron? Because off the ball, you can't really fault how much he works the team off the ball to get that ball back. So it's all right if you deliver going forward, but you've got to deliver coming back as well. So
I think for me, with those two players that we've talked about, I'll just kind of drop my opinion on it. Jadon Sancho, supremely talented, had a great season or couple of seasons, a few seasons, in fact, in the Bundesliga. But I was shocked at how much of a lack of pace he has. And that's one of the things that is really crucial at times in the position that he plays in the Premier League. Moussa Diaby doesn't have that issue. He's lightning quick. And he always has been. And I think that's part of his game that makes the difference at times. And skill technically wise, Sancho's got it. He's got it. But I think that lack of lightning quick pace, I think, is what's stopped him from really kicking on in England, even with the sort of troubles that he's had. And add with Leon Bailey, I actually think he's been quite unlucky. I think personally he went to the wrong team. I was shocked when he went to Villa in the state that they're in. I think if he went to Villa now, he'd be a different player, completely different player. If he went to Villa under Unai Emery right now, but when he went there in his first season, he picked up a number of injuries, so he never really got going. And there were some of them were niggly injuries that put him out for 3-4 weeks at a time over a course of a season. So he never really acclimatized or got used to playing. And as you talked about before, Richie, that the change of managers has affected things as well. So I think Leon Bailey is talented, and I think he could come good potentially. But I think he's been unlucky. I think Sancho is a different story. He's gone into Man United, it's a mess. But I think there's some fundamentals there that he's lacking that will stop him from being the player that we all expected Sancho to be. There's no surprise that he's not really in the England picture now, and I don't really see him being that moving forward. Certainly not under Ten Hag. But Moussa Diaby, I think he has everything. He can play on the left, he can play on the right. He's got lightning quick pace. He can score goals. He can get assists. I think his raw abilities are perfectly set for the Premier League. I genuinely believe that. And I think if he came to Newcastle under a settled structure and unit that Eddie Howe has created, I think he potentially could hit the ground running. I'd be super. We all would be super excited if he could sort that one and get through the door. But I just want to say really quickly. Sorry, Chris.
I was just going to say, mate. Just to add, I've just wrote in the chat. Then, just imagine a fully flying, fully fit ASM on the left and Diaby on the right.
It is a frightening thought. Yeah, it really would be a frightening thought. And then you've got the pace and the creativity and the skill of Alexander Isak, or the kind of the experience and the know-how of Callum Wilson. Either one of them playing as the frontline striker, you've got a striker there that can cause serious problems. It's an exciting thought. But look, we'll get on to one or two of those players in a second. 350 in the chat. Thank you for coming and joining us on Loading Mag NUFC. If you haven't already, click the like button. We've not said it now for the whole show until this point now. So if you haven't already, and we're on the button, of course we are. Thank you for watching the show so far. If you haven't subscribed, we are less than 200 away from 6K. 6K, so come and subscribe to the channel. Click the like while you're there. Target boys, 400. Sound good?
No, higher.
450 then?
Well, then, yeah, you've got to set your sights high.
Of course, 450 likes. Come on. There's 360 plus in the chat, so we should get 360 just like that. And then anybody else that joins later on can click the like and get us up to that 450. Why not, eh? Why not? I believe there is movement because...
Super chat received.
I think we pressed it at the same time again, Chris. I'm pretty... Oh, okay. I pressed it. I thought we did. But we've got... Thank you, Colin.
Cheers, Colin.
Super chat. No question. You got to put a
question in, Colin.
We've got Robin on the show tonight, and you've not even given him a question for him to answer. Come on, get your questions in at this point. Right, I think, have we got any questions in the chat we want to throw to Robin? Because I know we're kind of hitting the hour mark.
Yeah, there's a real good one from Kevin T, actually, and I'll start this one because obviously we know Robin's like of League and it basically says, which two players would you recommend for as a number 6 and a left-footed winger from the League?
I mean, Thuram's probably your best shout as a 6. Just so solid this season. We've already discussed him, obviously, young and can do just about everything on the ball. Physically ready, mentally perhaps not quite so, but we're not looking the next 3-6 months. We're looking long term here, next 3-4 years. So yeah, I'd go Thuram. Left wing. He might be a guy we actually speak about later, but Bradley Barcola at Lyon, massively talented player. I guess we're going to go on to speak about him. But those would be my two answers there. I'll speak more about Barcola later, no doubt.
We'll get to it in just a second, definitely. One more question before we eventually get to that question.
Yeah, and another fantastic one here, actually, and it's from 9 Goals. It says, question for Robin. Did Premier League teams miss out on Ludovic Blas from None? Obviously, he's just signed with Ron, because obviously we discussed him last year on Full Loaded Transfer Show, went to Rennes on loan, and obviously the move was made permanent today. So did Premier League teams miss out on him, in your opinion, Robin?
In terms of actually interest, not as far as I'm aware, but I mean, in terms of potential, yeah, there could be a player there that Premier League teams regret not going for. I mean, £12 million for a player of that standard is a steal. It's a real steal, and he's such a talented attacking, creative player. Technically gifted, can do lots with the ball. yeah, I think we could see him moving to the Premier League in a couple of years' time. Let's say summer of 2025. Ludovic Blas to make a move to the Premier League for 35 million euros. Let's say that's the prediction from here.
Interesting, very, very interesting. Look, let's get down to it. Let's start talking French football. There's a number of players there that we want to talk about, and you've already mentioned him, Robin. Look, it's a player that we in the loaded gang know about really, really well. We've watched him in the 21s as well.
It's funny because we had a chat on our chat over the weekend. Well, actually, it was before the weekend. Yeah. We were discussing two players from Lyon, and obviously, which Robin will know well. We were having little arguments who we prefer and stuff like that. And it was, and obviously, we're not going to say who, but it was quite funny because it looked as though people had been reading our chat on Twitter, hadn't it?
Yeah, just a little bit with some of the things that were popping out there. But Bradley Barcola, just talk to us about him. How good is his potential, and you know, just how good is he? Because for us, he looks like an absolute superstar talent.
Yeah, I agree. In short, he's obviously broken into the Lyon team this year properly. He's a winger for those of you who haven't seen him, and you know it's difficult to overstate the impact he's had in a relatively short period of time. I mean, for those who don't watch Lyon have been really pretty mediocre, and yet Bradley Barcola has come into the team as a 20-year-old, and he's just shone and just on such a regular basis. I mean, he only came into the team really when Laurent Blanc took charge just before the World Cup. And he's gone. He's played 37 times, so he played all but one game in Ligue 1. Scored 5 goals, created 10 more. But you know, the array of skill he's got is really pretty remarkable. And I think he was helped by the fact he was playing up front with Alexander Lacazette last year. They linked really superbly. The understanding between the two of them was immense, and I think Lacazette's experience helped him. But there's no doubt that Barcola has got so much talent himself. He's got the potential to go all the way to the top in the Premier League or whichever division he chooses to play in.
Super stuff. He's a player to look out for. We did say with Robin on the channel tonight that we would ask, not necessarily linked with Newcastle, but players that we know that are very, very talented, that we'd love at Newcastle and ones to keep an eye on. And look, Chris Hall, you can be very, very happy.
I'm waiting. I know what you're going to say.
Another one from Lyon, in fact, and Ligue 1, and it's Ryan Cherki. Robin, talk to us about Ryan Cherki. He seems to have lit up the under 21s, obviously, before their elimination. But we, like Chris, has talked about him on the loaded chat and waxed lyrical about him and his potential. How good is he? And you know, it looks like there are some links there with potential clubs this summer. Could he potentially lead this summer?
Well, first up, I have to admit that I've not actually seen any of the under 21s because I've been away on holiday. So I've heard good things about how Cherki's performances, but I haven't actually seen anything of France's under 21 displays. But you know, I can tell you about how he played in Ligue 1 last year, and again, he was a player. I mean, he's only 19. There's been so much made of Cherki's talent for years now. We're going back to sort of 2019. You know, for a long period. I mean, he came into the team as a 16-year-old, made an instant impact. I think it was a Coupe de France match on his debut. He just showed some outrageous skills. Admittedly, this was against a part-time team, but, you know, to come in there as a 16-year-old and just, you know, do it with your chest sticking out and just, you know, taking the mick out of the opponents. It's really outstanding to see. And obviously, because he's had so much exposure in terms of a media sense for so long. I mean, he was linked with Real Madrid as a 16-year-old. He's continued to be linked with Real Madrid since. There's been huge amounts made of him. And I don't think necessarily the progression in his games matched these links. However, what I would say is since January this year, he started to put it together a bit more. There's been a bit more end product about his game. I mean, we always talk about young players being inconsistent and perhaps lacking a bit of consistency and a cool header in the box. And Cherky, he's still only 19. I mean, perhaps not for you guys, but he's a guy that I've heard about for so long. You kind of think he's sort of 22, 23. So you tend to forget he's still this young. But yeah, there's definitely been a notable improvement in his game over the course of the last 6 months. If I was him, I would stay at Lyon. Obviously, there has been this transfer links, in part because, of his performances in under 21s. He's a player that people get excited about because, he's happy to take players on, do flicks. He excites the fans. He's one of these players that gets them out of their seats, as the cliche goes. So he's a player that's very sort of media friendly. I don't think his game quite matches that at the moment, as I said. So if I was him, I would stay at Lyon, and I can see him staying at Lyon for another year. He gets on well with Laurent Blanc, who's the head coach there at the moment. But I can totally understand why there's links presently. However, I think he'll be at Lyon for the season ahead. And I think if he progresses, as it looks like he might from what we've seen over the last 6 months, I think there'll be a very big transfer story there for Cherky. And perhaps he is a player that could go to Newcastle.
Interesting. Are you happy with that feedback from Robin, Chris? Because I know you're obviously a big fan of Ryan Cherky.
Yeah, Robin took the words out of my mouth actually, because when you said about he's the kind of player that gets you out your seat. When I saw clips of Ryan Cherky, it just took me back all those years to when we had Hatem Ben Arfa. Like, just one of those players when he's on the ball and you just think anything can happen. Such a talent at 19. What I want to ask you as well, Robin, I mean, I know you said it's probably unlikely if he was to go, but what do you think, ballpark, what do you think would be like a bid that would make Lyon sit up and take notes? Like, if someone was to bid for them, how much do you think, they'd have to start at to even tempt them to sell him?
I mean, that's an interesting question because Lyon have actually got some financial issues at the moment, so they're not in the soundest financial not in the most sound financial position at the moment. So that could potentially mean that they would sell at a lower price. However, there's a bit of angst between the board and the fans, so it would be hugely controversial if they were to allow Cherky to go for a steal. I mean, 19, given his potential, it's difficult to say. Maybe 25 million, something around that figure. I think it would probably be steep for what you would get in terms of where he is at the moment. Interesting though. Interesting. Good question.
Yeah.
When you said that, Robin, I just saw heart emojis just pop up.
25 million. Oh,
yeah. I mean, he's a darling of the Lyon fans because he's obviously come through the academy and he's got all these box of tricks. But I still think he needs to show a little bit more consistency.
Yeah. We're going to try and get through as much as we can. I know we've just gone over an hour. I don't know how much more time we've got with you, Robin, but this is fascinating to hear about some of these players. Just really just whilst we're on the subject of a couple of these French players, Richie, I know you've been digging. So come and talk to us about what you found.
Look, we both obviously the conversation so far is basically they've highlighted how good both these young lads are, and I think one of the conversations that we had about it over the weekend was obviously Bruno Guimaraes is going to know these two lads really well. Obviously, it's only been 18 months ago since he left. So you'd hope that there could be a possible word in the ear there if we were interested in that in either of them. I've got to agree with Robin. I think Cherky probably needs another 12 months at Lyon. Obviously, he's a year younger than Barcola as well. Barcola is an exceptional talent mind. I've actually got if you look at his stats from last year, bear in mind he only had 15 starts last year, and if I just go through this, 15 starts, and his goal contributions in Ligue 1 is just absolutely phenomenal. If 15 starts. He averaged 56 minutes per game. So obviously he's not even getting like a lot of full 90s out there. But 5 goals and 8, so 13 goal contributions and 15 starts from a 20-year-old who's, you know, he only played 26 out of the 30. Is it supposed to be 38? So he missed a third of the season as well. So if you actually add on that, what he could have, what those totals could have been, you know, you start to think that's some phenomenal figures that for a young lad still finding his feet. And if you look at him in the under-21 championship, he was fantastic. The build-up play that he had with Shirky for the opener against Ukraine was a fantastic goal. It was just, when we talked about this in the chat as well, there was a lot. The problem was there was a lot of they wanted to walk the ball into the goal, and that wasn't just off these two. There was Gurui as well, who was playing up front, who was guilty of it quite a few times in that game. But I just wonder if you look at the actual stats and compare Barcola to Almiron. I've got the picture here if it's loading up. My system's a bit late.
Yeah, it's up, mate. It's up. We can see it.
Look, that's obviously that's his stats last season compared to Miggy. And obviously he's an established Premier League. Obviously, bear in mind, that's Miggy's best ever season at Newcastle as well, and probably his best season at a league club full stop. And you can see a 20-year-old how far he's ahead of him already he is, and he's only going to get better.
Barcola's in green, by the way.
Barcola's in the green, yeah. So he's hands down. You know, my concern was, what was his defensive side like? And he calls Miggy's defensive side, because we know, as we already touched on during the show, was that's an area which is a con for any winger that comes in. You've got to be hard work and get and track back and help out the midfield and your full back, and he does that already. But it's the green, the attacking components of his game, which you can see is head and shoulders above Miggy Almiron. And for me, I think it says there player value 50 million euros. I think you'd have to pay more to get him out of Lyon now, if I'm honest with you. I think his contract's 3 years left on it still. But, you know, you could even put a double in it for 25, 30 million euros for someone of that calibre. I believe you could probably get him over the line. I don't know if Robin would think that's a fair assumption on that sort of thing, and what he thinks of those stats compared to Miggy.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to compare players somebody who's playing in League One to the Premier League, because obviously they're against different defenders. There's a level difference naturally, but I totally agree with you in terms of Barcola's quality. I think he's only been in the team for 8 months, but he already looks like a League One star. So I mean, at 20 years old, he's surely a player ready to take a step up. I agree with you. 15 million, it's just not possible for Leon to sell him for that. If you double it, again, yeah, possibly. In part because he's not established. I mean, you know, he has had one good season effectively. Let's see how he goes from there. But you know, he'd be a player that I would be quite happy to take a gamble on. For me, he was probably the breakout player of Ligue 1 last season, and you know, I think a Premier League team will take a chance on him sooner rather than later, and probably reap the rewards.
Do you think, Robin, then, that, in your opinion, would you say that Barcola is a safer bet than Cherky? Yes,
I think he's already shown himself to be more consistent. Cherky's talent's off the scale. When he has a good day, he's unplayable. But I think Barcola, you're going to get more consistency from him, and I think you're going to get a consistent goal threat. I think you're going to get consistent assists. And I think he'll be a big player in the years to come.
I'll say that there's Shirky's stats there just to compare to Bruno. Obviously, because obviously you look at, he's still probably our most creative centre midfielder. Obviously not the same direct role, but obviously the saying, and it backs up what Robin says. Though we are talking League One here, not Premier League. So obviously you don't know what that's going to be like if you came over at the Premier League, but they're still fantastic stats you've got to look at for a 19-year-old. They're saying about roughly 30 million euros for Shirky. That might be fair enough, or a little bit more than that. I don't know, but it's interesting anyway.
Yeah, Danny.
Definitely. There's so many other players we could talk about. I'm going to try and streamline this because obviously we're sort of running out of time with Robin. However, I just wanted to touch on one more player, not linked with Newcastle, but had a really, really good season at Long, and that's Lois Openda. How good is this player? How good is his talent? And I know he's been linked with Leipzig recently. Can you see him moving this summer?
Yeah, I mean, he's made it clear that he wants to transfer this summer, and he's really broken into the scene over the course of the last year in Ligue 1. He started off rather slowly. He joined Lens from Club Brugge for about 12 million euros. But he's obviously been an absolutely key player as Lens have finished second in Ligue 1 to PSG, which came as a massive surprise. And one of the key facets of their success last year was the recruitment. They've signed players who have fitted in perfectly, who have hit the ground and done exactly what they wanted them to do. And Openda kind of fits this bill. He was a little bit slow out the blocks, but by the end of the season, he was probably the form striker in Ligue 1, with the exception of Mbappe. Although, I have to say, he's a very, very different player from Mbappe. But his goal contribution was right up there with the PSG man. And I think that just shows you being able to live with a player of that standard is really pretty exceptional. And if he had played like that for the duration of the season, Lens might well have won the league. The fact that he didn't, well, you can't really expect anybody to play at that level for so long. But there's no doubt that he was one of the players of 2023 in Ligue 1. And having made it clear that he wants to leave, I think we can see him going before the end of the transfer window, if not before the start of the Ligue 1 season next month.
Definitely have to keep an eye on that one. Another player that I think will transition into another conversation this time to the Bundesliga is it's a French player, and it's Lovre Meyer. This player has actually been linked with Newcastle, and the Shields Gazette have talked about has potentially been interested. There are other teams, including Leverkusen, which brings us nicely onto the potential Bundesliga conversation that have also been different. How good is Lovre Meyer? A lot of people say he's kind of like the Modric regen. He looks like him. He's the same nationality, international teammate of him. How good can he be? And can you see him adapting to Premier League football if he wants to make the move?
Yeah, I mean, he's a player who models his game on Modric. He's made it clear that Modric is his role model, and he does play a very similar style of game. Obviously, left-footed. He plays for Reims, and he didn't actually have a very good season last year, which is weird because he had looked so good for the previous couple of years. He was a bit hot and cold, struggled a little bit through injuries, but for me, he's still a massively talented player. He's one of my personal favourite players to watch in Ligue 1 because of his poise in the ball, his technique, just the whole way he carries himself in the football field is absolutely gorgeous. And absolutely, he'd be one of the players that I would like to see step up to the Premier League at some stage, and I think he can. He's already shown against Premier League opposition how good he can be. I think it was the Europa League in 2020-21. I think he was instrumental as Dynamo Zagreb knocked out Tottenham. They came back from 2-0 down in the second leg and knocked Spurs out. And he was absolutely outstanding in that game. So he's shown he's got the capacity. He needs to put together a better season. We might see him go to Leverkusen. It wouldn't entirely surprise me if Rennes decided to sell him purely off the back of last season's a little bit disappointing campaign. But he's certainly a player who, if he doesn't make a big step up this summer, he could do in a year or two.
Now, interesting you mentioned Leverkusen because we've talked about this on the Loaded Chat and we said, Lovre Meyer potentially going to Leverkusen. Could this mean that this player potentially becomes available? And it's Florian Wirtz. Look, we're not saying he's linked to Newcastle. He's a supremely talented player. We're not saying that right now. But could it mean that he potentially moves on to another club? Who knows? But what do you know about Florian Wirtz from your perspective? He just looks a supremely talented boy, like a generational talent. from our point of view. And could that potentially mean if Lovren Meyer joins Leverkusen that there could be a potential for him to move on?
I would be surprised, to be honest. I mean, although Meyer is a creative midfielder, he tends to do his best work from a deeper role. Wirtz is a more attacking player, so I don't think it would mean that, or not directly anyway. Obviously, Wirtz has been a prodigious player. He's somebody we've known about for 2 or 3 years now. Has been linked with Real Madrid in the past, and then obviously suffered this cruciate ligament injury at the end of not last season, but the season before that, and spent a little bit of time recuperating last year. I think he missed around half the season, and even in the second half of the season, he wasn't necessarily fully fit, but still managed to produce 6 assists in the Bundesliga, which is good going for somebody who's not played a lot of football, coming back from a serious injury, still a young player. And I think it was perhaps its performances in the Europa League that kind of point to the fact that he is getting back to his very best. 8 appearances, 3 goals and 2 assists in that competition, which are pretty formidable numbers for a young player. And obviously Leverkusen did well. They got to the semi-finals before being knocked out by Jose Mourinho's Porto. But Wirtz is another gorgeous player, another supremely talented player, and one that we're going to see make a step up. Again, perhaps not this year, but next year I think it's guaranteed that he'll leave Leverkusen.
Interesting, very interesting. A lot of people have asked about some of these players that we're mentioning tonight. So whilst you're on it was a great opportunity to talk about some of these players, that's for sure. And
Super chat received. Super chat received.
You alerted to this one, Chris. I believe this is the correct one from Antoon Army. Thank you very much for your £5 donation.
Cheers,
Hi, hope you're all well. Another great show. Why are there lots of shows? Now the person
just arrived in the chat.
He's in the chat. So Daz is responsible for that because Daz is going to be on holiday. I think over the next week. So there are a few placeholders just in case some breaking news kicks in with Newcastle that we're there ready to go. So that's why answers the question. But thank you for your £5 donation. Absolutely spot on as well. I am wary of time with you, Robin. So I'm going to come to this question very, very quickly, if I can find it, on a certain player. Hold on a second. Another link potentially with Newcastle. There has been a few links in the past few days, and it's another French-based player from Monaco, Youssouf Fofana. Do you see him being a player that could potentially come to Newcastle or even leave Monaco? How good is he, and would he be a good fit for the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Lyon players, particularly sort of defensive midfielders, do fit into the Premier League well because Ligue does kind of lend itself to the Premier League in that regard in terms of its physicality and the need for players to be strong defensively, and particularly a defensive midfielder like Youssouf Fofana, who has broken into the France team and does look to be on his way from Monaco. Certainly would be an option as an alternative to Thuram. He's much more of an orthodox number 6 in Thuram. He's much less of a box-to-box player. Obviously, his strengths are typically defensive, and it would be interesting to see him how he develops. As I say, he's a player who could well fit into the Premier League because he's so strong, and he's a little bit more experienced than Thuram as well in terms of his Ligue 1 experience. So it'd be interesting, yeah, for sure.
Brilliant stuff. Last couple of questions from the chat before I let you go, Robin, because I know you've been on longer than anticipated. I really, really do appreciate it. What couple of questions have we got, Richie, from the chat that we can throw Robin's way?
Let's have a look. Foxy's got a good one here. Let's have a look. He's actually put a couple of. I'll just go with both of his actually because they're fantastic. Would have been Lions have confirmed Colombian Oscar Cortez. They'll make a huge profit on him in the next couple of years. Have you thoughts on that, Robin?
He's actually a player that I don't know a whole lot about. I mean, as I said earlier, Lens recruitment has typically been absolutely excellent. So, I mean, if a player goes to Lens, you can kind of get the feeling that they're going to be a good player, they're going to develop. They've recruited previously from Colombia as well. Centre-back called Facundo Medina has been linked to Manchester United in the past. Was arguably the best centre-back in the whole of League One last year in terms of his form, his performances. So, you know, I don't know much about Cortez, but Lens's track record of signing players has been excellent, and particularly Colombian players in recent years. So he's certainly one I'll keep an eye out for in the months and weeks to come.
Yeah, I'll just squeeze this one in for Will, because obviously we'll talk about Lens here. We've discussed Openda. We know all about Seka Fofana because we've discussed him loads of times over, the full transfer show. But basically, Will just wants to know, is there any other good players at Lens because of the fantastic season they had last year that you could possibly recommend?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, goalkeeper Bryce Samba has broken into the France team. So, you know, Newcastle aren't necessarily looking for a goalkeeper, I don't think, but, you know, a very, very solid goalkeeper. Medina is another player that I mentioned there. Kevin Danso, another centre-back, has been linked to Premier League clubs. He looks a player that's oven ready for the Premier League, another big, strong player, very strong in the air. And, you know, Lens just keep producing players who are just fit into their system, which is very physical-based, very athletic-based. And, you know, when you see that sort of player, you tend to think that they'll be able to fit into the Premier League. Perhaps not a very top team, but, you know, somewhere in the shake-up of the English top flight, just about everybody the recruits could fit in there. So I would say those three players are probably the ones that are most ready to break into the Premier League, with the exception, obviously, of Fofana. But those are the guys, yeah.
Foxy's put a good one on here as well. Another one. Do you see prospects Desiree Doué from Rennes or Habib Diarra from Strasbourg getting summer moves?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of chat about Diarra. He was a player that really exploded in the second half of the season. I think Strasbourg struggled in the first half, and, you know, it looked for a while that they were going to be surprisingly relegated, but, you know, pulled quite comfortably clear in the end. And Diarra was one of their form players. Was used a little bit more further forward than they might have expected. He started out as a sort of central midfielder, but, you know, moved into a sort of almost hybrid number 10 role at the end of the season and looked really exciting. So he's certainly a player who could move, albeit Strasbourg have just been taken over by Clear Lake Capital, who obviously own Chelsea. So their project is very much based around jungle players. Maybe that'll have an impact. We'll see. In terms of Doué, yeah, he was one of the most exciting young players in the early part of the season. Kind of faded a bit. It showed a bit of a lack of consistency. I would be surprised if he moved at this stage. I think he could do with another year up at Rennes. But, you know, a move certainly possible, because he did show enough to suggest that he could have a future at the very top level.
There's one here for you. I'll make this your last question, Robert. Obviously, we're all aware of time. It's just an interesting one, obviously, on your thought, because there's a lot of business done from the League on to the Premier League. And obviously, we know Bruno Guimaraes is not going to fall into this category, but he wants to know, in your opinion, who's been the biggest flop that's moved from League A onto the Premier League over the last few seasons?
I don't think it's an opinion. I think it's a fact. It's Nicolas Pepe to Arsenal. There's no doubt about it. Just so much money. It just not a great signing. I have to say, I thought he would probably perform better than he has done at Arsenal. But it's just not happened for him. And even when he came back to France last year with Nice, he just looked. He didn't look like an £80 million player. I can't see where his career goes from here. Saudi Arabia, probably.
Great shout. Robin, absolutely fantastic debut. Brilliant stuff. Thank you very, very much for coming and joining us on Loaded Mag NUFC. Again, just before you leave, do you want to plug where we can find you? Everyone in the chat that's watching the show live.
Yeah, so you can find my work at footballtransfers.com. I'm the chief editor there, and my Twitter account is at @Bairner. So that's Twitter account, and also Fred's as of today.
And you can see it right there on screen right now. And look, it'd be amazing. There's so many questions that we wanted to ask you that we couldn't get to because we've already gone over as it is right now. But it'd be great to have you on again later on in the window. And of course, Ronan Murphy, who's one of your colleagues who couldn't make it tonight because he was playing football. But we'll arrange it so he can make it as well, and we can get you both on the show together. If you know you guys are available.
Yep, that sounds good. It's been great being here, and just give me a shout later at the window, and hopefully we'll be able to sort something out.
Perfect. You take care, Robin. Great to have you on, and we'll speak to you very, very soon.
Okay, cheers, guys. All the best.
Thanks,
Robin. Thanks, mate.
Cheers. Thank you. Great job, Robin, on the channel. Brilliant guest. Great opinions on all things, whether it's Bundesliga or Liga. Sorry if we didn't get your questions in. We'll make sure we get him back on along with Ronan Murphy as well, who specialises in Bundesliga and other leagues, and we'll get all of their thoughts together. But boys, are we done, or do you want to go on? There's more to talk about.
We could do another 10, 15, 20, can't we? Surely.
I love how you went 10, 15, 20.
Hour, 3 hour. No,
I tell you what, Pete, we'll drop about 11:30 no later, and then we'll let Chris continue.
I don't think Lisa would be happy if I done that. I've got to be honest.
I don't think Daz would either.
You don't want to go into me on away days 4 hours. You don't want to go into a 4-hour show. You don't want to do that. However, we're not stopping there because there's a player. There's a number of players that I want to talk to you about. But the one that we haven't talked about that also has been getting a little bit of traction here. It's bubbling under the surface. And I want to get your opinions on this. And it's not going away, and it's Harvey Barnes. Harvey Barnes is continually being linked to, from Leicester to Newcastle United in a move. Mike McGrath put that article out and said that Eddie Howe wants a left winger this summer. And there's Harvey Barnes in his sights. Also from The Guardian as well, Newcastle leading the race to sign Harvey Barnes. One or two other teams are in there as well. And of course, Prodigal Zone and friend of the channel, Aaron Stokes, saying tonight, Leicester playing hardball over Harvey Barnes, what's north of 40 million. And asking the question, is he a luxury signing or not? Boys, I want to get your thoughts on this because it doesn't look like this link with Harvey Barnes is going away. It seems to be just constantly bubbling up there. What do you guys make of the Harvey Barnes link that's that keeps hanging there, lingering like a bad smell?
To be honest, I hope it is a bad smell, and that's about it. Because look, you've got to be realistic. Like, look, the reason obviously we've had Rob on the show, and his knowledge of Liga and Bundesliga is fantastic, right? So, you obviously we talk about the people who are linked from those leagues, and I think I think everybody in the chat would probably agree with us on this, that the players that we've mentioned already from those two leagues, hands down, I think everybody would take them over Harvey Barnes. Now, I know there's been a lot of people who are advocates of Harvey Barnes to be a fantastic player. And as we said the other night, it does enhance the squad over some players we've already got. But is he that one that takes you to the next level after that? So for me, yes, he's had goal contributions compared to the four wingers that we've got. I think he is about 13 or 14, I think I saw on like day behind the four wingers that we've got combined. But you've got to remember, obviously, he was playing in a team that had been part of this season, last just gone. Before that, he was playing in a team that was doing really well, qualifying for Europe, having good runs on in cups as well. And Iheanacho, Daka, Vardy, Maddison were all fit as well and scoring as well. So when you've got those people around you, you are going to have good assists. You are going to have good finishing and stuff like that. So, yes, he's probably upgrades on them. But as I've said, you want to have someone that's going to take you to the next level. We're talking Champions League now, consistent. And at this moment in time, Harvey Barnes is a fringe England player. He's not in regular squads. He makes the odd one if someone's injured and stuff like that. Whereas if you had, say, Moussa Diaby coming in, who's an established French international, Champions League experience with obviously Bayer Leverkusen, came through the ranks at PSG, so he's used to playing football the right way, obviously the way that we're starting to play our football over the last 18 months. For me, there's no question where, if you look at the similar sort of figures, possibly a little bit less even for Moussa Diaby than Harvey Barnes if Leicester want to really play hardball with you. For me, there's only one way you look. If the Diaby deal can get done, you do it. End of.
Yeah. Chris, your thoughts on Harvey Barnes? You similar mindset as Richie, or is there a different spin on this with regards to Harvey Barnes? 13 goals, 1 assist, 14 goal contributions in a season in which he was relegated from the Premier League isn't bad going. And I think the season before, when we talked about him, I think he had 23 goal contributions the season before, including the Europa League as well season, or Europa Conference season that he had. Not bad going for 2 seasons.
Now, do you know what? His figures stack up. His figures are impressive, and I think Richie hit the nail on the head. When you compare him to our current wingers, Harvey Barnes is probably an upgrade. But I don't know. I just think that I'm kind of sold now on Diaby, or Diaby, or however you say it. I don't know why I said Diaby. I think he. Somebody in the chat said it. I can't see who said it, but somebody in the chat said, "Do we need the left winger?" Probably not. I think it is a predominant right-sided winger, and Harvey Barnes is left-footed, isn't he? I just don't think I'd like to see an out-and-out right winger come in for me. If we need someone to play in the wing, it's that right wing position, and then obviously you've then got a question as to whether or not Murphy goes, whether Miggy goes, because then I think if we did bring in another winger, I think we're a bit top heavy in the winger position. Yes, Ryan Fraser's going to go, but he was removed from the squad last season, so I don't think he comes into it. I do think that either Miggy or Murphy will go. But interestingly, why I paused a little bit is because I thought it was time for a little bit of a comparison. So I did a quick comparison then while Richie was talking, and the green is Harvey Barnes and the blue is Moussa Diaby.
Ooh.
Question for you boys. Talent question. So green is Harvey Barnes and blue is Moussa Diaby. I didn't think it would be that conclusive, if I'm honest. Yeah, that kind of backs up what I'm thinking. I think Moussa Diaby is far more direct. Harvey Barnes, as I've just said, like his numbers and his figures are good in the Premier League, especially for the poor performance sides such as Leicester last season, which you boys mentioned. But I just feel like Diaby, I think he's more direct. I think he's getting those crosses in from the wing, and I think he'll be more consistent. My issue when I saw Harvey Barnes last season was there was moments where he scored a brilliant goal and you'd be like, bloody hell. And then I'd watch Leicester other times and you just wouldn't see him. He just didn't stand out. And for me, that was a concern. Whereas whenever I saw Moussa Diaby, you knew he was on the pitch. So I'm all in on Diaby now. And these reports, like I had a big grin on my face before, these reports were great to see. Great to see, because I think if we get him, fans have been losing their minds, or opposition fans have been losing their minds over Tonali. I think they'd lose it even more over Diaby.
Yeah. Mark Todd just put in their sofa score. Diaby, Barnes. Already done it. It's there.
It was there.
It's already there. We don't mess around on only Mago UFC. It's already there, the comparison in the house. But I agree with you, Chris. The Tonali deal that's out there, opposition fans have been losing their minds off the back of this. They are trying to play this down and question mark the Tonali deal any way, shape, or form. But the Diaby deal, that's going to be a double whammy, because they are not going to like that at all. That's going to show them really, really, really mean business. Now, Arsenal were heavily linked with him earlier on in the summer, and they were almost rubbing their hands together, getting excited on the back of getting Diaby. If we get him, they will know that they've missed out on a quality player. But as well as that, there's been people in the chat, one or two put in there. So, if we get Harvey Barnes, you trust anyhow. If that's who he wants, we trust him. We get behind him. I'm sure we're all three of us on the panel tonight would be right behind Harvey Barnes if he signed for Newcastle. But we all agree, and we've all said that Moussa Diaby is just that level above and 2 years younger. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Do you invest another 10 million in a player that's 2 years younger and is a level higher? I know I would, but it's like I say, it's about what's out there and how we get the deal done. I believe that we have a new member. Is that right?
Yeah, we do. Nick Allison. Thank you very much, mate. Much appreciated.
Cheers, Nick. Thank you, mate.
Welcome to the Loaded family. Welcome to the Madhouse.
Loads of ultras, apparently, Pete. Loads of ultras.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Loaded family, the Loaded ultras with the ultras. Welcome to the ultra family, should we say? It is a madhouse, but you'll love every second of it. That's for sure. Okay. Now we've talked about the attacking players. There is a position that we still need to get filled, in my opinion, and I'm sure your opinions as well. And we haven't really talked too much about left back. So, like Richie, there's a player that you came across and you thought, that would be an interesting deal. Talk to us about him.
Well, obviously, if anyone who doesn't know already, or was new to the channel and missed it a few weeks ago, we did a trilogy, left back trilogy on players who we thought would be fantastic additions to the team. Obviously, we know one of them, Mitchell Bakker, is on his way to Atlanta. He's for what literally is a snippet. I think it's 11 million, including add-ons. Really, you start to think if Newcastle aren't pulling the trigger on a deal like that, then there's got to be something already in the pipeline. Obviously, Kieran Tierney we discussed as well, and we going off reports today. He's due to sit down with Mikel Arteta and discuss his future. What's going to happen? Is he going to get game time, or is he going to be looking to move on? So that could be something to watch for in the next few days as well, guys. Obviously, we did a fantastic show on Borna Sosa as well. When you did the comparisons of the three, was the most attacking left back that we actually had. That was more like for like what you would get from Kieran Trippier on the other side, because obviously there's not many fullbacks like Kieran Trippier out there. And obviously when we put all the stats out, the amount of running he does and covering defensively as well as getting forward, and the assists and the creativity, there's not many that are up there with that sort of caliber. So we're doing a bit you start to think there's got to be somewhere out there if you do scout and stuff like that. And then I'd actually done a little bit of digging around, found this guy because obviously he came through the ranks at Man City before moving on to his current club, Leipzig. Now, he was on loan at Hoffenheim last year, so obviously Hoffenheim weren't obviously as great as Leipzig. And he had his contract a few weeks ago. He had a contract coming to an end, or he had 2 additional years to put on. Now, obviously, what Leipzig have done is they've triggered the additional 2-year option so that it protects their investment. But to be fair, the cost you're probably looking to get him out of here, you're probably looking at about under 15 million euros. He's a guy called Angelino. As I said, he came through Man City, Spanish international. He's 26-year-old, and there was actually this bit of info that came out. Now, this guy he's broken some good bits of news and stuff over the summer. Apparently, he's got a 20 million release clause, but as I said, 15 million euros. It could be something where you look at a loan with the option to buy and stuff like that. So, he's obviously not got a long-term future at Leipzig. And the reason why I want to look at him is because obviously he comes through at Man City. And we all know the academy at Man City is absolutely fantastic. Some just don't go through to make. You've got to remember, you had Kolarov, you had Zinchenko there, you had Cancelo. All these were guys who were established internationals in front of them. But what I want to do is I'll compare you. Obviously, we've done a lot of SofaScore, and like people obviously have asked in the chat, it's SofaScore, it's a football app, but they do fantastic in-depth stats on players as well, and you can compare them with others. So what I want to do is I want to show you a comparison of last. Now, bear in mind, he was at Hoffenheim. who aren't to the same level. I think anyone will know aren't the same level as Leipzig. The football standard of football isn't as good. The caliber of players isn't as good. So this is the like for like, but it does highlight his attacking stats going forward. Now, when we did all the stats with the other trilogy, there was only Bonucci that really came close to Kieran Trippier. But obviously that was with, as I said, that's with Hoffenheim last year, who aren't great. What I want to highlight is what he's capable of when Leipzig were firing and he was firing. And it's only a couple of years ago, but if you look at the stats here between Angelino and you look at Trips, there's nothing far off between the two of them. Now, to get two like-for-like full-backs, now bear in mind Angelino's probably more of a left wing back rather than a left back. But that, you start to think, is Trippier really a right back, or would you class him as a wing back the way he goes forward as well? So that's why a lot of people haven't really compared Angelino's stats, because they don't really class him as a left back. To me, yes, Trippier is a right back, but he plays more as a right wing back. He likes to get forward. He's creative. And the intelligence between the two of them, you can see they're pretty much like for like comparison there. Trippier is a little bit more defensively sound, but only just. But
was
everything
that
else,
2 years ago, Richie?
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So it shows you the like for like. So you know that's there. He's got the cable. He's come, as I said, he come through the Man City Academy. So you know he's going to be brought up playing football the right way. Which obviously we know that Eddie Howe took a lot of time looking at Pep Guardiola when he had his time off between the Bournemouth job and taking the Newcastle job, and he's looked at players like. And for me, this is the one guy that you're realistic. And it wouldn't, as I said, it wouldn't cost a lot. They're quoting say 10 million euros there, but I think 12 to 15 million really is a realistic fee for someone who's 26, still got his good years ahead of him. You're not breaking the bank with him. I just think it's someone that you could consider as a that nobody's really discussed for Premier League. But as I said, he's come through a Premier League academy. It just seems to be someone that has it on the radar, but could really, really do a good job for Newcastle. I don't know what you two lads think.
Chris, what are your thoughts? Angelino, I know about him. I'd seen him. He had a couple of stints or a couple of appearances at Man City. He does look a talented player. Going back 2 years, what Richie said when he was playing regular Leipzig, he was a talented boy. But what are your thoughts about what you saw in terms of the comparisons?
Yeah, I mean the comparisons stack up nicely, don't they? And he's what, 6 years the junior of Trippier, and as Richie said, coming into his prime, and for that kind of price, you can't knock it, can you? And if he's trained under the likes of Pep Guardiola, he's played at Man City, big club, obviously Premier League experience, would be settled in England. Far worse signings out there. So yeah, I know on FIFA he's quite rated quite highly. He's 83 on FIFA. That's always
there we go. Get him signed then, Chris. He's good on FIFA.
Yeah, 83 on FIFA. You know what I mean? That's not bad. And Chippy is 84. So yeah, there's if you could bring him in for like a reasonable fee, you could argue he's a good upgrade on the likes of say Matty Target. I mean, imagine if we were to bring Angelino in for 15 million euros, which is probably like what, 12 million, something like that, and then you sold Matty Target for 8 million. Your outlay is basically like 4 million.
To be fair, you might be able to, because of what we paid 15 million for Target, you could perhaps get 12 million back to cover the cost of the deal. Full stop.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I mean, there'd be a lot of clubs interested in Matty Target, because it's not to say he's a bad player. He's a good, solid Premier League player, and there would be clubs interested in him, I think, if we said that, he was available. So you're right, Rich, 10, 12 million, maybe 15, who knows? Because he knows the league, and he's never really let us down, has he? Matty Target, he's had a couple of moments where, like, you think, oh, could have done better, but good, solid professional, keeps himself out of trouble. And he'd be a good signing for most Premier League clubs from say the middle downwards. I think some clubs would definitely be interested in him. So if you were to swap someone like Angelino, who is experienced all around Europe, played in the Premier League as well, great age. I think we're fine saying great age at 26, aren't we? Can we have that? We can have that.
As Pete always says, you'd be happy to be 26 again.
Oh, too right. absolutely right. Yeah.
Great days, great days, great days, great days.
No, absolutely.
But you look at it, to be fair, I'm pretty sure Target is 26, 27. So they were similar age. And, you know, you look at Angelino, he got 9 goals, he got 9 assists last season from a left back. That's fantastic. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're playing at Hoffenheim, Leipzig, or Newcastle. 9 assists from left back. Superb. You would take that all day long.
More than any of our left backs have for the last few years.
Exactly. For me, I would take him ahead of Target all day. He's the kind of guy that you probably want to play in the Champions League, to get forward, bomb forward, and create problems at home under the lights at St James's Park. He would be a great addition. There's no doubt about it. But that's just one player that we've identified. Like say, Richie had noticed that there might be a potential to get him on the cheap. It'd be a great deal. There's no doubt about it. And look, we are still looking for that left back. There's still a conversation out there for the left back position. So look, let's wait and see. Will Angelino sign for Newcastle? We don't know. But if it does pop up or come about potentially, you'll be coming right back to Loaded Mag NUFC, because we'll be talking about it. That's for sure. But I'm looking at the chat right now, and I'm on my phone. I'm seeing there's 187 likes, but we've got over 300 in the chat. Come on, what is going on right now? Everybody, over 300.
It takes nothing to press the like button.
Just click the like button. Come on, you know it makes sense. And whilst you're there, subscribe. We've had 10 subscribers plus already now. New subscribers. We are less than 190, 180 away from 6K. Come and get us to 6K as soon as possible. Anyone that's watching the chat and watching the show tonight, make sure you get us to there as soon as possible. Get us there, because getting us to 6K will take us on to the next milestone. That's for sure. Other players, other links that are there that we can talk about. There's lots of others, but there's one again, another one that we like quite a bit that we've talked about. Chris, I know we've talked about him a lot. Not linked with Newcastle, but we'd love him as a potential signing. And it's this guy. It's Morgan's Gibbs-White. Forest Watcher said they've got no intention of selling Morgan's Gibbs-White, but his price tag would be close to treble digits if England midfielder were to leave the club. I don't believe that. I know Jack Talbot wrote the article. I don't believe that. And we've had a conversation on Morgan's Gibbs-White, but how good do you think Morgan's Gibbs-White is as a player? What have you seen? What have you observed of him, and what he's done for Forest and England under 21s? And what can he bring to Newcastle?
Is this to me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. No, I think he's far better than what I gave him credit for. Obviously, I saw him breaking through at Wolves, and he looked a good player. And I think most people or most Premier League fans of opposition clubs were all going, "Why have Nottingham Forest paid all that money for him?" And Pete, we thought, didn't we, that the deal was around 40-50 million, but it turns out it was 25. I think you said this, didn't you? 25 rising up to that. So whether Forest will ever see that, I don't know. I suppose it depends on how they do. Maybe they'll have had to pay Wolves some money because they've stayed up. I imagine that would have been one of the factors. But yeah, he looks a real talent, and I think the reason that we've all naturally kind of looked at him and thought, he'd be all right for Newcastle, in the fact that he's played so well for the under-21s next to Anthony Gordon up front, and he just gives you that extra option, doesn't he? I mean, predominantly, I think he's a number 10, but he's one of those players, isn't he, where if you play him anywhere across the forward line, which I think Forest have done this season, I think he's played on either wing. He's played in, the number 10 behind the striker. England have been playing him up top with Gordon. So he gives you a lot of options, and I suppose, he's a player that I think he's still really young, isn't he? Is Morgan Gibbs-White about 21, 22? I think he's
similar. I think he's a similar age to Anthony Gordon.
Yeah, he's a young lad, and he looks like he's got all the potential in the world. So you're right, Pete. He's not been linked with us, but I know a lot of Newcastle fans have been sitting up and going, "Oof, actually, he was a big reason why Nottingham Forest stayed in the league last season." I think Brennan Johnson got a lot of the attention, but Morgan Gibbs-White made them tick. Those penetrating runs, he picked the ball up in the middle of the field and he drive the team forward. He's loads and loads of talent, bags of talent. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was on the list, because as I say, he ticks a lot of boxes, and he would be a player. I think if we could maybe tempt him out of Forest. Pete, you said privately, didn't you, that I think if a Champions League club comes calling, I think Forest would struggle to keep hold of him. And I think anywhere in the region of 40 to 50 million would get Forest considering it, most certainly.
I honestly, I think if Newcastle comes calling, I think he pushes for a move. I don't believe he would be happy to just sit at Forest and fight a potential another relegation when he's got the opportunity to play Champions League football. If Champions League football is there available to him, I think he pushes for a move and Forest go, you know what, Champions League football, fair enough. And I think they do a deal potentially for Morgan Gibbs-White. Yes, the initial deal was 25 million, rising to 42. I think the highest clause in his contract is 10 million. So you're looking at 35 million for the most realistic and the highest clause that's in his contract. I think there's other ones in there that are not necessarily realistic, but the highest one is 10 million. So the most you're looking at in terms of a value currently is 35 million. I think if you put 35 million on the table for Morgan Gibbs-White, I think that is something where Forest turn around and Morgan Gibbs-White turns around and says, look, I want to go. Like, let's sort something out. And I think that potentially happens. He's a surprise package. I remember one of my really good friends who's a Sheffield United fan talking about how good he was on loan for them in the Championship season. He was unreal for them before Forest signed him. And they and my mate Craig, he bigged him up and said he's a super talent, really, really super. They were gutted to not be able to hold on to him because he was a big reason why they made a push for promotion that season. But Forest snapped him up and he's been great for them. And he's got better and better as the season's gone on. It's almost like he's got that air of confidence about him. But then he's doing it in England under 21s, and you think he for me, at some point next season, will be looking at an England call-up. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. And we've talked about Joe Willock, for example, getting something similar. I do see them directly fighting out potentially for an England call-up, potentially together. Could well be the future. Who knows? Similar age, great age. I think he's 23 years old. Great age. 23. So I think there's a real potential there. No real links, but there is potential. And Foxy put in there, I saw this a minute ago, the amount of people that laughed at his transfer to Forest, the add-ons made the price look more worse than it really is. And to be fair, I fell for that because I thought it was about 40 million.
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
But to see it was only 25 is an absolute steal for what he's produced this season, that's for sure. But yeah, Morgan Gibbs-White, early my game NUFC, I've talked about him. We'll keep an eye out. We'll see if anything moves on him for sure. I'm not going to talk about this for long. Conor Gallagher fading, moves to Newcastle as England international eyes. Chelsea stay. I'll be honest, I don't really care.
Let him stay there. Let him stay.
I don't care. Richie, do you care about Conor Gallagher coming to Newcastle?
No.
Good.
Hold on. Tonali, Gallagher.
Exactly.
You can't really have them in the same conversation, can you, to be fair?
No,
definitely not. And you know what? I'm just going to delete that now because I never want to see that again.
The only time Gallagher gets put in our brand thing again, Pete, is for Chelsea away days, and that's it.
Great show. Chelsea away days with Lewis. Lewis Carefree, no doubt he'll be on the channel as well. Interestingly, ASM to Marseille. He's been linked with Saudi. He's been linked with AC Milan. Like, well, look, I want to get this out there for you guys because there's a lot of rumblings going on about ASM and the old keep or sell. Like, what, in your opinion, is your thoughts on ASM? What's going to happen with him between now and the start of the season? Are you in the middle, or are you one way or the other in terms of he's going to be sold, he's going to stay? It just seems to be changing one day to the next. Like, Chris, what are your thoughts on ASM right now?
Do you know what? My feelings are quite simple now. I think I saw the tweet the other day that he posted of him in his black and white gear, and he's got his zipped mouth and his dove and stuff like that. And for me, I think he's going to stay. The only way he gets out of Newcastle is if the only way.
The dance emoji.
Yeah.
He stayed at Chelsea.
Wasn't.
Sorry.
No, it's all right, mate. The only way I think ASM leaves Newcastle is if a silly Saudi bid comes in for 40 million plus. And then I think then the club would go, do you want to go? And if he says, yeah, he'll go. I don't think we're actively looking to get rid of him. I don't think we need to balance the books in any way. And I think I said this to you boys the other night. I think ASM's probably got a European price and he's got a Saudi price. And for the price that we'd want for ASM, which would be north of 30 million, I struggle to see any European club paying that based on the figures. I mean, we talked about Harvey Barnes before, didn't we? Now, for me, ASM's got a far bigger ceiling than Harvey Barnes. But if you look at the stats, it's night and day. Harvey Barnes, assists, goals, and that's in a poor performing Leicester team. Alan St. Maximin hasn't got those stats. Now, we know it's not all about stats, and we know what Maxi can bring to the table when he's in form, when he's at it, when he's fully fit. But ultimately, clubs will look at that and when they're negotiating with us and go, mate, we're not going to pay more than 20, 25 million for him. Look at the figures. And then it's at that point, I think we go, well, we're not selling then. We know what he can bring, and I think in this Champions League season, he could be the difference maker. If he makes that difference in that one game and it gets us through to the next stage, was it worth keeping him? Of course it was. And he will frighten any defender in Europe. We know that. On his day, St. Maximin is unplayable. We need to see more of those days, granted, but I think it would take an offer of 40 million plus, and the only way that we get that offer is if someone from Saudi comes in and bids for them. And then I think the club will say to Maxi, do you want to go? We want you to stay, but if you want to go, you can go. And it's whether or not he wants to go and join that Saudi revolution or not. That's how I see it.
Richie, have you got a different spin on it with ASM? Have you got a different opinion of what's likely to happen with him?
It's a difficult one because, when we did squad game last year, we all felt that he had 12 months to prove himself under the Eddie Howe project. And to be fair, I think he'll probably himself be disappointed with his return. From the last season, he's got a fantastic goal start the season against Wolves, and that was his only goal all season. So you do expect more goals from Alan St. Maximin. Yes, I think he assisted 5 or 6. But as we've discussed already with other people when we've been looking at targets to come in, those sort of figures, when you combine ASM, Anthony Gordon, Miguel Almiron, and Jacob Murphy, you combine them four together over the last couple of seasons, and Harvey Barnes is nearly equals a lot of the four of them. It highlights the problem, and we didn't score as many goals as Arsenal and Man City this year. We had our goal difference was good because we had the best defensive record in the Premier League. I think if we look at the stats, I think we missed. Or reading this tweet today, we hit the woodwork the most in the Premier League this season with 26, and we missed 63 chances, like good goal scoring chances, which you should be putting away. And I think that highlights what we've been saying. And I think that, yes, he's been that maverick. We all love him. We will always love ASM, no matter what happens. I don't know. As you say, there's been rumours of Everton and Spurs in the Premier League, but it's like would you get the money you wanted for ASM from the Premier League squad? Obviously, you're not going to get a really decent fee going from Marseille because they're not like, you know, the amount of cash they've got's not phenomenal.
Yeah.
For me, I think you either sell it to Saudi, as Chris said, for the ridiculous Saudi money, 40-odd million or plus, or he stays. I think that's how it's going to be. I really do. Because as we all know, on his day, he can be unplayable on his day. And as Chris said, you know, if you're looking at in a Champions League game and you brought him off the bench, do you know what I mean? And the fullback's going to absolutely hate it. Do you know what I mean? Comes off the bench and you think, oh, God, I've got him running this for the last 25, 30 minutes. What am I going to do? I'm already knackered or whatever. And he would embrace Champions League night at St. James's Park. He's just... We always know, we've said it ourselves, if you go back to the when he had the game against Man City, the start of the season, second home game of the season, he was unplayable. Kyle Walker couldn't get near him. So on his day, he can do it. So that's why I think I can't see us selling them to a Premier League club. There's nowhere in Europe that can really get the money that we'd really want for him. I think it would have to be a Saudi bid that would come in, and as long as you pretty much turn around and you replace him on top of what we already need, then you would let him go. But
yeah, you're absolutely right. You look at the Man City, Liverpool, Man United, and there's a couple of other games in there as well. Not as many games as you'd want for him to play well, but all of them are big teams, and he's produced good performances in all of them. So yeah, it does kind of make sense. I don't know. I think it's really interesting because we talked about this on I think it might have been on Tuesday. We talked about this. Is that Eddie Howe has come out in one of the articles the other week and said that it's all about ASM. If he wants to go, he'll go. If he wants to stay, he'll stay. It seems like Eddie Howe wants him to stay. But that's not what we've been told for the last year from a lot of journalists that have been adamant that he's not an Eddie Howe type player and Eddie Howe doesn't want him and wants him sold. That's not what we've been told in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And that actually those same journalists are now saying that Eddie Howe wants him to stay. So it's kind of like we don't know where we're at as a fan base. We don't know whether Eddie Howe wants him, whether Eddie Howe doesn't, because we've been told lots of different things over the last year. We don't know whether ASM wants to stay. We don't know whether he wants to go. People are going on about his social media and saying he needs to stop putting his social media out, blah, 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 blah. He did the same last summer. He was putting out videos of him running up and down hills on his holidays. I think it was in Greece last summer. He was doing exactly the same. There's no difference. People forget that this is part of Alan Saint-Maximin, and there was pictures of him with his obviously his designer gear on, blah blah blah, and people were getting on at him on the back of that because he was putting out pictures and putting out cryptic messages. But what was interesting is that the stuff that they're putting out about ASM, they were putting it out, but he was doing it for promotional purposes, for the gear that he was promoting. It wasn't necessarily Newcastle, but he was promoting his gear that he's being sponsored by, that a lot of players are sponsored by. So it's one of these things. Sometimes we read too much into these things. Sometimes we think everything's football related. Sometimes it's not. Look, it is what it is. Whatever happens, if he gets sold, he gets sold. If he stays, he stays. I think pockets of Newcastle fans, large pockets, will be happy either way. But Chris, sorry, what were we going to say?
No, I was just going to say, mate, do you think, and Richie as well, do you think if we sign, and it's an if, we don't know, but if we sign Moussa Diaby, do you think that encourages Alan Saint-Maximin to stay at Newcastle, given that Moussa Diaby is an established French international, and he knows that the French manager will be wanting to watch Moussa Diaby, and he'll take more interest in Newcastle, and no doubt he's probably struck up a pretty good relationship with Diaby. I imagine he knows him. Do you think that in any way would encourage him to stay even more?
Richie, what do you think? Sorry.
Sorry, I was reading the chat. You'll have to, if you want to go there, Pete, it's fine. I was just...
The one thing I'll say is that Alain Saint-Maximin will not play for France under Didier Deschamps.
No.
Didier Deschamps will not pick him. Didier Deschamps was exactly the same with Hatim Ben Arfa, and they had a fallout, which at Marseille, which is why he came to Newcastle, because they had a big fallout. Didier Deschamps doesn't like flair players. He likes players that fit into a system, which is why Moussa Sissoko played for France for so long. So for me, Alain Saint-Maximin doesn't play for France while Didier Deschamps is still manager. It's as simple as that. So it doesn't matter whether Diaby comes to the club or not, nothing changes. What I will say is that if Moussa Diaby comes to the club, one of those wingers has to leave. It's as simple as that. Gordon's not going to leave because he's a newly signed player. Do we get rid of Murphy? We could potentially cash in and get some money for him. Does Miggy leave? We've talked about it before. Does ASM leave? Quite possibly. Joe Linton's not going anywhere, who can play on the left as well. One of them, I do believe, has to leave because I think they've got too many wingers. So I think if we're going to get one in of significant quality, one has to leave. Who that is, I think that's up for debate and speculation, really, because I just think we'll have too many going into a Premier League season. But look, boys, I am wary. We've gone 2 hours, 10 minutes. It was not.
I was going to say, I just wanted to. It's not NUFC, but it does have links, and I wanted to bring up this topic because a certain BT Sports pundit, Rio Ferdinand, put a tweet out there. I don't know whether you guys saw this, and I just wanted to get your thoughts because I thought it was very, very interesting. He called out Jamie Carragher in this. He proper went for a minute because he basically called him out for going quiet on Saudi Arabia now that Stevie Gerrard's off to Saudi. Because obviously he called all the players for going over there. The Premier League had to do something about it because it was ruining football. You were strengthening some of the players with all the overpriced fees and stuff like that. But his best mate, who he used to carry his bag and do his boots for at Anfield, is now off to manage over there. But guess who hasn't said a word? Jamie Carragher. I just want to get your thoughts because obviously with the Saudi links, obviously we're owned by PAF and everything. Obviously, there's a lot of people who comment when the narrative suits them, but when it doesn't suit them, they don't back it up at all. I think it's where it sort of goes down the line of it's aimed at Newcastle, and it's you know what I mean. I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. I thought it was quite interesting.
The scouts are in the room. What are your thoughts on this? what are your thoughts on the Gerard Carragher Ferdinand situation that Richie said?
Doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Doesn't surprise me in the slightest. And I think it even aside from the fact that the former teammates both from Liverpool, I think it even goes down to the fact that fans of other clubs, so whether it be Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, whoever, they will all lessen off in their criticism of the Saudi League as soon as it benefits their club. You ask any Chelsea fan now, what do you think of the Saudi League? They'd be like, yeah, it's fine, no problems. As soon as Saudi start coming in and buying Man United players or Man City players or Liverpool players, people will then start going, that's all right, it's okay. Let's not forget, Roberto Firmino's already been signed, hasn't he, by a Saudi club, Liverpool legends, and I'm sure there'll be a couple of players that Liverpool want to get rid of, as will some of the other big six, big seven clubs. We'll all get our turn, I'm sure, because they want to enhance their league and they want their league to become a dominant force in world football. So I think over time, yes, they've bought a lot of Chelsea players, but they will probably go around the other clubs and buy those players as well. There was talks of Bernardo Silva going to Saudi, and I'm sure they'll get an inflated price for him. But yeah, but the pundits, they change their mind like the wind, don't they? It's like Gary Neville, exactly the same. He was against. He was against, like the Qataris and the World Cup and stuff, and then he went and presented in the World Cup, didn't he? And it was like, well, I thought you hated it. I thought you were against it. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to work there though. Money changes everything, and that's the key. Money talks, and people will end up with egg on the face or look very embarrassed when they suddenly change their minds because it doesn't fit their narrative anymore.
I don't need to add anything else. Chris, spot on. Great stuff. You're absolutely right. Nothing to add on that as well, and it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of unfolds as the days and weeks go on. More Saudi clubs buy Europeans' best players. Very interesting. But just before we head off, there is another super chat.
It's off Stephen Fairbairn. Fantastic. It doesn't matter how much is it. Every little donation is much appreciated. Stephen, remember next time, get a question though. Obviously, either for us or whoever the guest is, we always prioritize anyone that puts a super chat in. We'll always prioritize your questions over anybody else's. Just as a pure thanks for obviously your donation to the channel.
Super chat.
I think we might have pressed that at the same time, but we got it in there eventually as well. And of course, we're going to wrap up the show now. We've done way longer than we anticipated, but it was a fantastic chat with lots of different talking points. And of course, we have to say massive thanks to our sponsors before we go, and Bathroom Designs Co. H2O. Thank you for all your support with all of your bathroom designs. And as we can see, Chris is not quite getting a shower, but he's close. He's close enough. There we go. And massive thanks to Russ and the team for all of their things that they produce bathroom related. Some of their designs are absolute quality. Now, we also, obviously, of course, the Radiator Shed with some of their other designs, bathroom, the radiatorshed.com. Thank you for your support as always, Russ. And of course, they provide top quality materials made from plate steel, providing longevity. All designs are manufactured in Italy, and aluminium rads are very environmentally friendly and are protected for source heat pumps. Right. We've got. Do we mention this now? Because I'm not sure if we do. The other sponsor in the room.
I don't know if there's anything being clarified on that one. Chris might know more.
Not just yet, but it's very, very close. It's imminent.
Okay. So the reason why...
Oh, not that word again, Chris. Not imminent. We've had enough of that. Man. Jesus Christ.
There's been a smoke screen.
Imminent.
Oh, no smoke screens, please. I'm glad I didn't put it up on the screen because I wasn't quite sure. So thank you for clarifying that, Chris. But what we can say is Jordan and the team, Liam Kennedy, Newcastle World, scan and sign up for free NUFC newsletters using the QR code right on the screen there. So if you're watching back, get your mobile phone onto that and get all the latest news from Newcastle United or Newcastle World. Jordan will be back with us very, very soon to talk all things NUFC. And of course, we've got the Northern East partnership, the Install Works, as our additional sponsor. So thank you all for your continued support. So there are sponsors. That's everything else out there. Thank you to the mods, the likes of Lisa and the team, for all you do in the chat. Also, on top of that, thank you to everyone in the chat for your questions. Sorry if we didn't get to them tonight. Robin stayed longer than he anticipated, and he was more than happy to. He answered the questions, and he'll be back along with Ronan to talk all things European football later on in the window. Boys, been an absolute pleasure, as always. Great to talk all things NUFC with you guys. We're getting towards the end of that show. Boys, Richard, I'll come to you. What do we say?
How do you like that?
Take care, guys. Speak to you soon.
Right, everyone.
How you like drink it.